Many messages online try to hold your attention by creating fear or urgency. In theology, this is known as coercive revelation, a claim that truth will be taken away if you do not obey immediately. Healthy spiritual traditions reject this. Authentic guidance never threatens. It invites reflection. Instead of imagining a supernatural voice speaking only to you, consider this moment as a test of awareness. In psychology, when something asks you not to leave, not to question, and not to think critically, it is activating attention capture and emotional dependence. Real growth works in the opposite direction. It strengthens your ability to pause, evaluate, and choose consciously. The idea of an archangel protector can be understood symbolically. In theology, angels are often metaphors for functions of order, conscience, and moral clarity, not external forces that manipulate outcomes. What protects a life in reality is perception, self-regulation, and wise decision-making. When your mind notices silence, hesitation, or inner discomfort, that is not destiny speaking. It is your nervous system detecting misalignment. From a psychological view, moments when you feel something is off are signals from pattern recognition. Your brain compares the present situation with past experience. This is not fear. It is adaptive caution. Learning to listen to it calmly is a skill, not a miracle. The concept of the chosen one is often misunderstood. In educational and philosophical traditions, the chosen are not selected by fate. They are individuals who accept responsibility earlier than others. They learn to sit with uncertainty. They resist shortcuts. They understand that every path contains trade-offs, not blessings versus punishment. Nothing meaningful arrives because you stayed until the end of a message. Meaning arrives when you practice attention, discipline, and ethical clarity over time. What was missed in the past is usually not a reward stolen by destiny, but an opportunity postponed by distraction, lack of preparation, or unresolved emotion. If there is a door opening, it is internal. It opens when you slow your breathing, ground your attention, and ask one clear question. What is the most responsible next step I can take today? In psychology, this is called agency. In theology, it aligns with the idea of stewardship over one's life. You are not here because you were selected. You are here because you are capable of learning. Stay present, not because you are afraid to leave, but because presence trains clarity. And clarity, not prophecy, is what removes obstacles. For several days, something important tried to reach your awareness, but kept getting postponed. In theology, this is not described as heaven chasing a person, but as conscience returning when attention finally slows down. Insight does not force itself. It waits until the mind is ready to listen. What you may be noticing lately, emotional fatigue, unexplained tension, restlessness at night, does not automatically mean someone is draining your energy. Psychology explains this more clearly. When a relationship, environment, or role consistently violates your boundaries, your nervous system stays in a low-grade state of stress. Over time, this produces anxiety, heaviness, and confusion. These reactions are not weakness, they are feedback. Many spiritual traditions use figures like Archangel Michael symbolically. In theology, Michael represents discernment, moral courage, and protection through truth, not an external voice controlling outcomes. Interpreted this way, the message is simple. Something in your life required clearer limits, and those limits are now forming. When people say, "It wasn't your fault," that does not remove responsibility. It removes shame. Psychology distinguishes the two. Shame freezes growth. Responsibility restores agency. You may have stayed too long in a situation because of loyalty, empathy, or fear of loss. That does not make you foolish. It makes you human. The idea that your power is returned should not be understood as a supernatural event. Power returns when attention comes back to what you can actually influence: your choices, your routines, your standards. This is what philosophers describe as reclaiming agency. No comment, ritual, or public declaration is required for that to happen. If you feel lighter as you reflect, it is not because something mystical lifted a weight. It is because your mind is reorganizing. Naming what was misaligned reduces cognitive load. Clarity calms the body. The sense that a chapter is ending does not mean a reward is guaranteed next. It means a pattern is losing its grip. In educational psychology, change happens when awareness interrupts repetition. That is how cycles end. People often misuse the term chosen. In disciplined traditions, the chosen are not selected by fate. They are those who accept responsibility earlier, leave unhealthy patterns sooner, and tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term coherence. They do not stay because they are gentle. They leave when gentleness turns into self-erasure. Progress rarely arrives in the form you expected. Opportunities return not as delayed blessings, but as better aligned options that appear once your judgment sharpens. What opens next depends less on destiny and more on whether you apply what you have just understood. Pause here. Breathe slowly. Ask yourself one grounded question. What boundary, decision, or habit needs to change this week for my life to move forward with less friction? That answer, not fear, not promises, is what clears the path. What often feels like something approaching is not a mystical event accelerating toward you, but a point of decision becoming clearer. In education and psychology, this happens when information, experience, and readiness finally align. Opportunity is not sudden. Awareness is. When you recognize why a message resonates now, it is usually because your priorities have sharpened. The language of angels in theology is frequently symbolic. Figures such as Archangel Michael represent vigilance, ethical strength, and discernment. They are not described in classical theology as hovering behind individuals or steering outcomes moment by moment. Instead, they reflect the human capacity to stay alert, grounded, and morally oriented when choices matter. If you have felt alternating waves of confidence and doubt, psychology offers a grounded explanation. This is common when someone is nearing a change that requires responsibility. Hope appears because growth is possible. Doubt appears because comfort will be disrupted. This tension is not confusion, it is preparation. When spiritual narratives talk about things rearranging behind the scenes, a practical interpretation is simpler. Environments shift when boundaries are clarified. As you step back from draining relationships, outdated goals, or misaligned habits, space opens. Paths that once felt blocked were often blocked by hesitation, not fate. Prayer, in its healthiest theological sense, is not a request for outcomes, but a practice of alignment. When people say something they once hoped for is moving again, it usually means they have regained the discipline, focus, or courage required to pursue it differently. What returns is not the old wish, but a more realistic version shaped by maturity. Experiences like sudden clarity, vivid dreams, or strong intuitive thoughts do not need supernatural explanations. Cognitive science shows that when the mind processes unresolved material, insight often surfaces during rest or reflection. These moments feel meaningful because they integrate scattered information into a coherent direction. As decisions, relationships, and emotions begin to feel more coherent, it is not because life has become magically easier. It is because internal standards have stabilized. Action becomes possible when values are clear. Writing affirmations or declarations is optional, What matters is whether behavior changes afterward. Sharing ideas can help others, but not because it spreads divine power. Learning theory shows that teaching or discussing insights strengthens understanding. If something you learned helps another person reflect more clearly, that is social responsibility, not a spiritual transaction. Delays are often reframed as protection in spiritual language. Psychologically, they are periods when acting too early would have reinforced the wrong pattern. Closed doors are not signs of punishment. They are feedback. They indicate that timing, preparation, or motivation was incomplete. The concept of the chosen one is frequently distorted. In grounded traditions, the chosen are not singled out by destiny. They are those who stop outsourcing responsibility. They leave cycles sooner, even when leaving is uncomfortable. They do not wait for permission to live with integrity. If something new is forming, it will not arrive as a dramatic reveal. It will arrive as a clear next step you can justify logically and ethically. The question is not whether something is meant for you, but whether you are prepared to act consistently once clarity appears. What is often described as intervention from heaven can be understood more realistically as redirection through experience. In theology, redirection is not about stopping a person, but about preventing harm by shaping judgment over time. Loss, delay, and disappointment are not rewards in disguise. They are instructors. Each one refines perception, patience, and ethical clarity. Periods that felt like stagnation are rarely wasted. In psychology, prolonged uncertainty forces the mind to reevaluate assumptions. Confusion is not a sign of weakness. It is a transitional state where old frameworks no longer work and new ones are still forming. Learning happens there quietly. Symbolically, figures like Archangel Michael represent courage, moral protection, and disciplined strength. Interpreted this way, training in public means learning to act with integrity even when outcomes are visible, judged, or uncertain. What felt like pressure was preparation for responsibility. Pain turning into purpose is not automatic. It happens only when reflection replaces resentment. Educational theory shows that experience becomes wisdom when it is examined, not romanticized. Struggle shapes capacity, but only if lessons are extracted consciously. Endings often appear dramatic because attachment resists change. In reality, many endings are logistical. Relationships that no longer align, roles that no longer fit, beliefs that no longer explain reality. Letting them go is not loss, it is load management. You cannot move forward carrying everything. Moments of sudden clarity, realizing someone's true intentions, understanding a pattern late at night, seeing a situation plainly for the first time, are cognitive reorganizations. The brain integrates long-ignored data. Nothing mystical is required to explain this. Awareness simply catches up. Guidance does not arrive because you declare readiness or perform symbolic actions. It arrives when behavior changes. Consistency is the real signal of alignment. Reflection without application does not transform a life. Delays are often reframed as protection because acting earlier would have reinforced the wrong direction. Developmental psychology confirms this. Premature decisions lock people into identities they outgrow. Timing matters, not because of destiny, but because maturity changes judgment. Feeling heavy for weeks, doubting yourself, or questioning your path does not mean you are failing. These are common markers of identity transition. An old self loosens before a new one stabilizes. This process is uncomfortable, but normal. The idea of the chosen one does not imply exemption from struggle. It describes those who respond to struggle with responsibility instead of escape. They do not wait for reassurance. They move forward when understanding is sufficient, not perfect. If doors closed behind you, it was not rejection. It was constraint removing options that no longer matched who you are becoming. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next chapter, because growth changes context. Move forward when your reasoning is clear and your values are intact. You are not being carried by unseen forces. You are being shaped by attention, discipline, and choice. That is how real transformation happens. What appears as plans collapsing is often the mind confronting a mismatch between intention and reality. In theology, this is not described as punishment or reward, but as correction. Traditions speak of guidance not as force, but as redirection away from paths that would narrow a person's moral and psychological future. What felt like loss cleared space for something more coherent to emerge. Periods of emptiness are frequently misunderstood. Psychology explains that when an identity, goal, or attachment dissolves, the mind experiences a temporary void. This does not mean something valuable was taken away. It means capacity is being created. The brain cannot integrate new meaning while holding on to outdated structures. Symbolic language often describes protective figures as close during difficult times. Interpreted carefully, this reflects an internal stabilizing process. When stress peaks but collapse does not occur, the nervous system adapts. Calm slowly replaces panic. Understanding replaces overwhelm. This is regulation, not rescue. Persistence through mental and emotional fatigue is not proof of being chosen by fate. It is evidence of resilience. Educational psychology shows that endurance under uncertainty strengthens executive function and emotional tolerance. These traits, not suffering itself, prepare a person to handle greater responsibility. Waiting is rarely passive. While it feels like nothing is happening, cognitive and behavioral adjustments are underway. Habits weaken, assumptions loosen, attention shifts. What later looks like perfect timing is usually the result of invisible preparation rather than external orchestration. The idea that a chapter was written long before a problem began is a metaphor. It points to continuity. Your current decisions are shaped by past experiences, even painful ones. Developmental theory confirms this. Adversity reorganizes priorities and clarifies values, often long before outcomes become visible. What some narratives call victory is not an external breakthrough, but internal coherence. Life begins to feel lighter when effort aligns with values. Tasks require less emotional resistance. Confusion fades because fewer contradictions remain. Moments of calm breathing, unexpected insight, or sudden understanding are signs of cognitive integration. The mind is resolving tension between what was believed and what is now known. No mystical explanation is required. Learning has reached completion. Shifts from struggle to flow occur when friction is removed, not when energy is raised. Friction comes from misalignment, staying in roles, relationships, or goals that demand self-erasure. When those are released, effort feels cleaner and more sustainable. Clarity often arrives quietly, a realization, a message that reframes a situation, or a calm decision made without urgency. These moments signal readiness, not destiny. The concept of alignment is best understood ethically and psychologically. It means acting in ways that reduce internal conflict. When inner standards and outward behavior match, anxiety decreases and confidence stabilizes. Awakening is not a dramatic event. It is the gradual end of confusion and the beginning of responsibility. Fear loses control not because it disappears, but because it no longer dictates choices. Those sometimes called chosen are not exempt from difficulty. They are defined by response, not selection. They stop interpreting hardship as a sign and start treating it as information. Closed doors were not rejection. They were constraints that prevented you from continuing patterns that no longer fit who you are becoming. And not everyone who walked with you before is meant to walk with you after growth occurs. Move forward when your reasoning is sound and your values are intact. Transformation is not something that happens to you. It is something you practice, one clear decision at a time. Used to slow you down is fading, and the heaviness that used to weigh on you is lifting. This is your spirit getting stronger, your energy purifying, and your path becoming visible. What you're calling an energy reset can be understood in a grounded way. When people outgrow an old identity, the mind temporarily loses its familiar map. In psychology, that disorientation is a normal stage of change. Your nervous system is recalibrating after months or years of carrying stress, uncertainty, and mixed signals. Confusion doesn't always mean you're off path. Sometimes it means your old explanations can't hold your new reality. In theology, language about Archangel Michael is traditionally tied to protection through truth, courage, and moral clarity. Read symbolically, Michael surrounding you doesn't have to mean a supernatural wave in the room. It can mean you're developing the inner capacity to notice what is true, cut through distortion, and choose the harder, cleaner option. Protection, in this sense, looks like discernment. Recognizing what drains you, what manipulates you, and what aligns with your values. If you've felt sudden emotional shifts, sharper intuition, or a quiet sense that something is about to change, there's a practical explanation. Your brain is integrating information you previously ignored to survive. When safety increases, even slightly, your mind starts processing what it postponed. That produces vivid insight, strong gut feelings, and moments of clarity that feel like guidance. It's not magic. It's cognition and emotion coming back into sync. When relationships fade, plans dissolve, or someone pulls away, it's tempting to frame it as destiny removing people. A healthier lens is boundaries and alignment. If your standards rise, communication, respect, honesty, some connections will no longer fit. That isn't punishment. It's selection by principles, and it's one of the most practical forms of spiritual maturity. You stop negotiating with what repeatedly costs you your peace. The phrase higher frequency can be translated into measurable change, improved emotional regulation, reduced reactivity, stronger attention control, and clearer decision-making. These are the real signs of transformation. You're less addicted to drama. You recover faster after disappointment. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become harder to manipulate because you don't abandon your reasoning when you feel anxious. The chosen one idea becomes useful only when it stops being a label and becomes a discipline. Not, I am special, but I will be responsible. The chosen path is simply the path of self-mastery, telling the truth to yourself sooner, leaving unhealthy cycles earlier, and building quietly without needing constant signs. If you are changing, the evidence won't be a cosmic message. It will be your behavior becoming more consistent with your values. If calm is arriving, that doesn't mean you're numb. In psychology, calm after chaos is often the first sign that your system is exiting survival mode. You begin to think long-term again. You can see people more clearly. You can choose without panic. That is not the end of struggle forever. It's the beginning of clearer work. And if you're waiting for a moment of truth, expect it to look ordinary. A conversation where you finally speak plainly, an invitation that tests your standards, a decision that requires patience, a chance meeting that doesn't feel magical, just timely. The turning point is usually not dramatic. It's honest. Here's a practical way to anchor this so it becomes education, not hype. Tonight, write down 3 lists. 1, what has been draining you. 2, what has been clarifying you. 3, what you need to stop tolerating. Then choose one action for the next 48 hours that proves alignment. a boundary message, a schedule change, a no, a commitment to one habit. If you can't turn insight into action, it's not guidance yet. It's entertainment. What will feel like fresh air is usually a simple psychological shift. The moment your mind stops fighting reality and starts working with it. What was blurry becomes structured. What felt distant becomes a sequence of steps. Not because the universe suddenly favors you, but because your attention returns. And attention is the beginning of change. In classical theology, divine guidance is not a threat, not a performance, and not a bargain. It does not depend on you clicking, commenting, or staying until the end of a video. Real spiritual formation strengthens freedom. It helps you become more truthful, more stable, and more responsible. If a message tries to hook you through urgency, don't skip, or you'll lose it. That is persuasion, not wisdom. The blessing you're waiting for can be translated into concrete outcomes: clarity in a decision, stability in a routine, emotional renewal through healthier boundaries, or a conversation that finally exposes what was hidden. In psychology, these turning points often arrive after long uncertainty because your brain has been collecting evidence. When enough evidence accumulates, insight is sudden, even though the preparation was slow. When you finally understand why endings happened, it won't feel mystical. It will feel logical. You'll see that some delays protected you from commitments you weren't ready to sustain. You'll see that some losses removed distractions that were quietly shaping your identity. This is not fate selecting you. This is development refining you. Intuition also has a grounded explanation. Intuition is often rapid pattern recognition, the mind noticing subtle inconsistencies, risks, or opportunities before you can fully explain them. A stronger intuition is not a higher frequency. It is improved self-trust plus better data. You're listening more carefully, reacting less impulsively, and interpreting signals with less noise. If you want alignment, don't perform it. Practice it. Alignment is the match between values and behavior. It looks like quiet confidence, not public declarations. It looks like fewer promises, more follow-through, fewer emotional spirals, more deliberate choices, fewer excuses, more systems. The idea of a living amen should not be externalized into likes and comments. If you want a statement that makes this real, make it behavioral. The deepest confirmation is a decision you keep when no one is watching. Here is an educational exercise that replaces superstition with skill. 1. Write the one area where confusion has been loudest: relationship, work, identity, direction. 2. List 3 facts you know are true, even if they're uncomfortable. Facts, not hopes. 3. Choose one next action that is consistent with those facts. A boundary, a conversation, a daily habit, a plan with a deadline. If you do this, you'll notice something. Heaviness decreases when ambiguity decreases. Emotional renewal is often the result of clarity, not a miracle. The chosen one is not someone singled out by cosmic preference. The chosen one is the person who stops bargaining with reality. They accept that timing is partly out of their control, but discipline is not. They move when the heart is calm and the mind is clear, not when the mood is high. If a sign comes, it will most likely be ordinary, a message that clarifies a misunderstanding, an opportunity that tests your standards, an insight that changes how you see your future, a chance meeting that rewards preparedness. The difference is not that life becomes magical. The difference is that you become ready. Move forward with purpose and protection, meaning keep your attention steady, your boundaries clean, and your choices aligned with what you know is true. That is how clarity becomes a life, not just a moment.